Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Sunday, February 13th, 2022, on behalf of a partnership with Alaska Public Media. And if you would like additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov. It's an interactive map you can click on to check up on family and friends anywhere in the country. There's a big map of the lower 48 and then Alaska and Hawaii off to the lower left. And just taking a look at this afternoon's image, there is an area of orange in Southern California. That is for a heat advisory that includes Los Angeles, where the Super Bowl is being played at. They expect temperatures well into the 80s to near 90 degrees for early season heat, even by Southern California standards. So check that out. Otherwise, looking at weather headlines, impressive precipitation totals have come in from the Panhandle for February 6th through the 12th. It was a very rainy and occasionally snowy week last week. We now have blizzard warnings in effect for St. Paul and Pribilof Islands until 5 a.m. Monday morning, as a frontal system is going to push a band of heavier wind-driven snow through that area as that front lifts northward up to along the southwest coast into south central areas. It's also going to be spreading some accumulating snows across the southwest and south central parts of the state. There's also the possibility of enhanced aurora activity tonight and through Valentine's Day as we're awaiting the arrival of a couple solar disturbances. It still looks like we're going to see above normal temperatures and precipitation, especially across south central areas in through the Panhandle and up into the areas, at least the southern third of the state, from the southwest interior to along the Alaska Range as we go in the next week or two. But here's that blizzard warning in effect for the Pribilof Islands and St. Paul until 5 a.m. on Monday morning, and as a result of a frontal system that is lifting north and eastward, and that'll be spreading some snow on up into southwest and south central areas as we go through the day tomorrow. And looking at also some other current advisories, there's a winter weather advisory for the east central area, primarily for Eagle Summit, mainly for blowing snow as they have 30 to 40 mile an hour winds there. And then the east arm of the Alaska Range, Isabel Pass, could still pick up a couple more inches of snow tonight into early Monday, giving Isabel Pass perhaps 4 to 8 inches of snowfall. And then up there along the west coast, we have a large area of wind chill advisories for around areas surrounding Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, northwest of Kotzebue, and also including St. Lawrence, and then wind chill warning for colder temperatures up there around Prudhoe Bay and Katovik, including the eastern half there of the Arctic coast. Namely, here's a picture. New exit, bitter cold, 44 below this morning for Alaska's coldest temperature. And if we look at the next image, that's St. Paul. The Pribilof Islands blizzard warning is in effect. The snow and winds are picking up here through the afternoon hours, and we expect blizzard conditions overnight into the pre-dawn hours on Monday. Let's take a look at some impressive rainfall totals from southeast Alaska. These were compiled by meteorologist Grant Smith, who was so kind to put this together. Snettisham Power Plant, over 18 and a half inches of rainfall between February 6th and 12th, 16 and a third inches of rain at Pelican, and 15 and a third inches of rain at Little Port Walter. And generally speaking, areas that include Gustavus, Sitka, Craig, Juneau, Klawak have picked up 5 to 6 inches of rain in that time frame, with 7 inches, nearly 7 inches at Yakutat Airport and 7 inches at Long Lake. Snowfall amounts measured only on Friday, Yakutat had 17 inches of snow for the week. And then Eagle Crest Base, 15 and a half inches. Haines Custom, 11.6 inches, with lesser amounts elsewhere. But still impressive rainfall amounts there for a week period. It's going to continue to see these systems moving out, but nothing quite as heavy as this past week. We do expect the possibility of some enhanced Alaskan auroras tonight and maybe tomorrow night. We're expecting a G1 class geomagnetic storm as those solar disturbances arrive here tonight into tomorrow. So keep your eyes peeled if you're in a place where skies are clear. It is the full snow moon, which will occur Wednesday morning, February 16th. So the northern lights are going to have to battle the bright light of the full moon. We'll see who wins out. If it's a good aurora display, it can do that. I've seen that happen myself, even from Michigan. So here we have where skies are going to be clearest. We expect areas along the lower Yukon on up into the south, especially slopes there of the Brooks Range. So again, if you're fortunate and have clear skies, it's worth taking a look the next couple of nights. And looking at our precipitation cloud shields, we have one little low off to the west of Haida-Gwaii. We have another frontal system arcing through the lower central portion of the Aleutians with a stronger low southwest of the central Aleutians. And that is going to be the main weather player here as we go through the next couple of days, because that front will eventually end up extending from west to east across the southern third of the state. So this afternoon, we have that weak low just west-southwest of Haida-Gwaii, just brushing the southern panhandle with a little rain. Still some pockets of light snow along the Alaska Range, parts of the eastern interior. Otherwise, back to the west, there's that arcing front, and as it lifts north and eastward, the Pribilof Islands are going to see a period of heavier and blowing, drifting snow. That's why they have the blizzard conditions there tonight into early Monday morning. That's a 954 low, pretty strong low there just southwest of the Aleutians. And then Monday, high pressure remains in place along the Brooks Range north slope into the Canadian Arctic coast. And that frontal boundary creeps further northward, so we expect accumulating snows even to spread up into the Anchorage Bowl, on up into the lower Mat-Su Valley. We could see 2 to 4 inches of snow in the Anchorage Bowl, and maybe as much as 5 to 8 inches of snow, especially from Eagle River on up toward Wasilla, Palmer, and Talkeetna, with also some accumulating snows there in portions of the southwest interior, the lower Kuskokwim Delta. And by Tuesday, that frontal boundary will remain stalled out from the central Bering across the southern third of the state through the Alaska Range, and then dropping back down just north of the Panhandle into British Columbia, with another weak low coming up out of the North Pacific toward the eastern Aleutians. And looking at temperatures, these are just, I'm going to quick go through these. Generally statewide, coldest temperatures are there in the north. That's where sub-zero temperatures will reside, especially along and north of the Yukon River, with 40s creeping up through the Alaska Peninsula, portions of especially the outer Panhandle. And by Tuesday afternoon, we'll see a number of temperatures above freezing there in through the southwest interior and the west side of the Alaska Range, and coming up into south central areas. Specifically, lows will be a bit around or just above freezing in the southwestern Panhandle, and temperatures steady to slowly rising in parts like the Kenai Peninsula. And by Monday afternoon, we could see temperatures approaching freezing even in Anchorage, definitely above freezing as you get Homer south and westward, some lower 40s there at Kodiak, as well as in the Panhandle, Sitka down toward Craig and Ketchikan. Tuesday morning, lows will be above freezing on the outer and southern parts of the Panhandle, with rising temperatures and some snowfall up there in the up through the Anchorage Bowl. And then as we go through Tuesday afternoon, temperatures will be at their warmest extent, probably around or even a bit above freezing there at Anchorage, and definitely above freezing elsewhere in south central, especially near the coast. Up there in the north, Monday morning, 30s and 40s below, isolated 40s below at like New Exit. They are especially along and north of the Yukon River. High temperatures in the teens and 20s below on Monday. And then Tuesday morning, we could see lows such as Arctic Village, 42 below, 18 below out there in the west end of the Seward Peninsula. And then as we go into Tuesday afternoon, temperatures moderate slightly, especially along the Yukon River, not quite as cold. And then as we look at the southwest interior, still a number of temperatures, upper Kuskokwim, and especially toward the mid-Yukon Valley, up toward Galena and those areas there, we'll see lows well below zero, but creeping upwards there along the Alaska Peninsula. And by Monday afternoon, we should get some temperatures in the lower 40s creeping up the Alaska Peninsula into Kodiak Island. And temperatures will continue to slowly rise up there along Bristol Bay, lower Kuskokwim Delta. Tuesday morning, again, temperatures steady to slowly rising and staying generally above freezing across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. By Tuesday afternoon, temperatures will be above freezing even on the west side of the Alaska Range, again up there through the lower Kuskokwim Basin. and extending on out through the Aleutian chain. And a quick check of the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for February 19th through the 23rd shows temperatures may average a bit above normal from south central areas, Cook Inlet, Anchorage eastward through the Panhandle, with the best chance of temperatures averaging a bit below normal across the north and west. We're not expecting anything quite as cold as we've seen maybe earlier in January, nothing like that, but at least that's the trend. And we're still going to see a series of Pacific systems that occasionally cut in across the Bering or up into the Gulf. And as that moisture converges across the interior along the Alaska Range and also west and north of the Alaska Range, riding up the Yukon River Basin, we expect the best chance of above normal precipitation to extend from the southwest interior all the way into the central and east central interior. So that can mean some additional bouts of accumulating snows in that sense. And it just looks like even though temperatures may not be quite as cold, wintry weather will prevail at times. So definitely, if you have a chance tonight or tomorrow and skies are clear, take a look for the northern lights.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, now it's time for your aviation weather, and if you have a flight planned early this week, anticipate some active weather and frontal boundary that's going to be lifting northward from the Alaska Peninsula up into the southwest, south central areas of the state. And it will produce, on the cold side, areas of some snow, lower ceilings and visibilities. On the south side, where the air is above freezing and warmer, some rain, especially along the outer coast there of the, say, eastern Aleutians and especially the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, and some of that moisture will translate eastward into the Panhandle by the time we get into Tuesday. There will also be another little compact low lift out of the North Pacific on up toward the eastern half of the Aleutians as we go through Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday night. Otherwise, high pressure stretches from far eastern Russia through the North Slope into far northwest Canada. And on Monday afternoon, look for the IFR conditions to be expanding along and ahead of that frontal boundary into the southwest portion of the state, including Bristol Bay, Cook Inlet, and on into the northern Gulf. And then on Tuesday, that area of IFR conditions and precipitation expands a little further north up to along the Alaska Range into the southwest interior, lower Yukon Valley, and into the northern Panhandle and northern Gulf. And by Tuesday afternoon, we'll still see areas of IFR along the Alaska Range just south of the Yukon River from the southwest part of the state all the way to the Alcan border, and also some IFR conditions along the inner coastal mountains, British Columbia there in the Panhandle, and then also out along the tip of the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians as that next little compact low lifts northward. Anaktuvik as well as Adigan Pass, we'll see MVFR conditions become VFR on Sunday. And as we go further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill will start out VFR, but then become IFR as that moisture increases out ahead of the frontal boundary Monday afternoon and evening. Rainy Pass will be just far enough north that should only become MVFR conditions afternoon later in the day, but eventually IFR conditions will overspread Rainy Pass as well as Windy Pass as we go into Monday night. But in the meantime, during the day, Monday, we expect Windy Pass eastward through Isabel as well as Mentasta passes to see marginal visual flight rules become VFR for a time. And then further south and west, we're going to see Tanita VFR holding on Monday. And then Portage Pass, we'll start to see that moisture lifting northward from out of the northern Gulf. So look for VFR conditions to give way to MVFR conditions by Monday afternoon. And then Chilkoot and White should be able to hold on to another VFR day there, though there has been some issues with fog forming with any clearing at night, especially Saturday night and this Sunday morning. So it could happen again. Keep that in mind. Freezing levels do bump up 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the Panhandle and come up to 4,000 and 6,000 feet at the tip of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. The greatest threat for icing is going to be along and north of that frontal boundary as it lifts up along the Alaska Peninsula into the southwest coast. Freezing levels will be lower along the southwest coast on the north side of the front, but higher in the warmer air on the south side of the front, above 6,000 feet there, the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula. And we have what was called an anticyclonic curvature as a result of high pressure in the North Pacific south of the Gulf with 190 knot southwesterly wind max just south of the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. And as we bring it down to 9,000 feet, we see that high pressure circulation south of the Gulf in the North Pacific, and on the northwest side of it, winds upwards 80 to 90 knots there southeast of Kodiak Island. We also have another low pressure out there to the western Aleutians, creating south-southwest winds of upwards of 50, near 60 knots coming into the central Aleutians. And as we bring it down to 3,000 feet, we see those 60-knot winds in the central Aleutians from the south-southwest. And this is all going to translate to some issues with turbulence. There could be isolated severe turbulence over portions of the central Aleutians, as well as into the lower half of the Alaska Peninsula between the surface and 4,000 feet. Also, some winds across the outer coast of the Panhandle could create considerable moderate turbulence between the surface and 5,000 feet. So that wraps it up for your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned, please check the latest conditions and forecast, and have a safe flight.
We try to provide everyone with the best forecast we can for snow, sleet, and ice in the winter with as much notice as we can. And we've made great strides in our forecasting over the years. However, given the complexity in winter weather forecasting, the first forecast simply won't be as good as the one closer to the event. As the event nears, our forecasts will become more precise.
Forecasts are updated constantly from days before the event until the precipitation actually begins. If you want the most accurate and up-to-date information, you have to check the forecast frequently.
It's very unlikely that any computer model snow amount forecast, especially days in advance, will be exactly right. Sometimes it's even difficult to forecast amounts the day of the event. Don't focus so much on exact numbers. Our forecast offices produce a range of possibilities available on each office's winter page.
Impacts from winter storms can vary a lot across even short distances, especially true in the terrain of the mountains, but even in areas with more subtle differences in elevation. Just because it's not bad where you are doesn't mean that it isn't bad just a short distance away.
There's often a small area, perhaps not bigger than a couple of counties, of heavy snow embedded within the larger area of precipitation. It is very difficult to pinpoint exactly where this area will occur in advance. That is why we give ranges and probabilities, and that is what we mean when we say isolated higher amounts.
Not all storms are the same. Some storms affect different areas in different ways, and even weaker storms can produce big impacts. The Winter Storm Severity Index is a product that uses threat levels to depict overall anticipated impacts to society due to winter weather.
You can be a citizen scientist. You can report the weather that is occurring at your location any time of day. Local National Weather Service forecast offices offer Skywarn Storm Spotter training, so you can become an official Skywarn Storm Spotter. The MPing app and website allows you to submit your report online. And for the most dedicated, you can join AKwx, where you can submit your daily precipitation report directly to the National Weather Service. Your ground truth helps us improve forecasts.
Did you know that a 1 to 2 degree temperature difference either at the surface or just a few hundred feet off the ground can make a big difference in whether we get rain, freezing rain, sleet, or snow? That's really hard to forecast when we don't have a lot of data, but thankfully we do have 92 upper air stations that release weather balloons at least twice a day.
Even if you live in warmer climates, it's important to know your winter precipitation types when traveling. Freezing rain is liquid rain that freezes when it hits the ground, creating a coat of ice on roads, walkways, trees, and power lines. Sleet is rain that freezes into ice pellets before reaching the ground.
Snow squalls are quick, intense bursts of heavy snow that are accompanied by gusty winds. They rapidly reduce visibility and can create treacherous travel. Snow squall warnings are issued for localized areas where snow squalls are expected in the next 30 to 60 minutes. As of December 2019, they are now sent as one of the wireless emergency alerts.
Know the differences between watches, warnings, and advisories. A winter storm warning means that confidence is high that a winter storm will produce heavy wintry precipitation and cause significant impacts. A winter storm watch means that confidence is medium and that a winter storm producing significant impacts is possible. A winter weather advisory means to exercise caution as light amounts of wintry precipitation will cause slick conditions and may impact travel.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to the final segment of the show. With the sea ice edge today, same theme. We're going to continue to see generally a northeasterly flow off the mainland. That's going to tend to push the ice further south and westward here as we head through the early part of the week. There is a frontal boundary that is lifting northward from out of the Aleutians and along the Alaska Peninsula. That may try and turn the winds a little more southeasterly there in Bristol Bay and the southeast part of the Bering Sea. But for the Panhandle in the far southeast, the inner channels will generally have north-northwest winds 10 to 20 knots, waves running about 2 to 4 feet, highest there in Lynn Canal, maybe 4-footers. And then along the outer Gulf Coast, winds will be westerly to 25 knots, Yakutat westward, but then turning northwesterly, 25 to 30 knots along the coast from Gustavus southward through Sitka and Craig. And on Tuesday, look for the inner channels to have winds 15 to 20 knots from the south with waves 3-4 feet. And then along the Gulf Coast, winds generally out of the west around 25 knots and waves 10 to 12 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, Prince William Sound winds will be out of the east 10 knots, waves 2 feet. And the open waters of the northwest Gulf off of the Kenai will generally be from the southwest around 20 knots, waves 6-7 feet. And easterly, northeast to east winds lower Cook Inlet at 30 knots and waves 6 to 7 feet. On Tuesday, winds will be northeasterly around 10 knots in Prince William Sound with 2-foot waves. Winds a bit more variable in the lower portion of Cook Inlet around 10 knots with waves of 3 to 5 feet, and generally west winds off the Kenai Peninsula at 20 knots and waves around 11 feet as you get out into the further out in the open waters. Around Kodiak Island, winds will be south-southeast 20 to 30 knots. Picking up waves building 14 to 20 feet as you get off of Sand Point, and then east to southeast winds 25 to 30 knots from Bristol Bay down toward Cold Bay. And on Tuesday, as that frontal boundary lifts further northward, we'll see winds southwesterly through Shelikof Strait and off of Kodiak Island as well, at southwesterly at 25 knots, waves in the open waters up around 16, 17 feet, and then The winds turn back toward the southeast, especially once you get around Sandpoint, as well as on the Bering side at 15 knots or so, and waves only 5 feet there north of Cold Bay. Across the Aleutian chain, winds will generally be out of the south-southeast, lightest 25 knots there around Dutch Harbor, but picking up to 35 to 40 knot gales in the central Aleutians around Atka and Adak, and waves 25 to near 30 feet south of the central Aleutians in the North Pacific. As we go into Tuesday, winds will be southeasterly there across the eastern Aleutians with winds of 20 to 25 knots, waves 18 to 20 feet on the North Pacific side, 8 to 14 feet on the Bering side. They'll turn more southerly as you get to Atka, Adak, on up toward Kiska at 25 to 30 knots, and waves in the mid and upper teens on the North Pacific side. Across the west coast, northeasterly winds out over the ice around 30 knots. Again, we'll tend to push the ice a little further south and west early in the week. Where there is open water, waves 11 feet around St. Paul, St. George, although ice is just northeast of St. Paul, and winds will continue generally out of the northeast around 20, 30 knots, but there could even be 40 knot winds in the vicinity of St. Matthew. And looking at the Arctic coast, winds will be from the west around 15 to 20 knots with the ice in place. Lower Chukchi Sea, look for winds west to southwest, especially from Point Hope northward to Wainwright around 10 knots, and then turning more north-northwesterly through the Bering Strait around 15 knots and accelerating to north-northeasterly to 30 knots there on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And then on Tuesday, winds will generally be out of the west-southwest along the Arctic coast, Utqiagvik to Katovik, and then along the northwest coast, winds 10 knots out of the northwest to north, at 10 to 15 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea, finally accelerating to about 30 knots from the north-northeast on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And for Monday, high pressure remains in place across eastern Russia, the North Slope, and we have that low just west-southwest of the central Aleutians with an occluded front working its way up into Bristol Bay and just north of Kodiak Island. And as that front stalls out across the southern third of the state, running west to east from the central Bering, across the Alaska Range into British Columbia, we'll see another low scoot up from the North Pacific into the eastern Aleutians by Tuesday afternoon. That's all the time I have, and thank you for watching tonight's show.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.